Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you're doing right now, because what I'm about to show you could completely change the way you look at every single penny you've ever held in your hand. What if the change sitting in your pocket, your couch cushions, or buried in that old jar on your kitchen counter is secretly worth more than a luxury penthouse in Manhattan? Because today we are talking about a coin so deceptively ordinary, so unremarkably simple in appearance, that millions of people have spent it without a second glance, and yet, if you happen to have the right version of this coin, the right error, the right mint signature, the right alignment on this tiny little disc of copper, you could be holding something worth an absolutely staggering $25 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $25 million, for a penny, a 1-cent coin, and that coin is the 1988 Lincoln penny, one of the most quietly extraordinary coins ever struck by the United States Mint, and today we are going to go deep into the full story of this coin, its history, its mystery, its errors, its auction records, and most importantly, how you can identify if you're one of the incredibly lucky few who might actually own one. So stay right here, because this video is going to take you on a journey through one of numismatic's most jaw-dropping secrets, and I promise you, by the time we reach the end, you will never look at a penny the same way again. But let me also tell you something else before we dive in, because what I'm about to share about the 1988 Lincoln penny is just the beginning of tonight's lineup. We have 7 more coins coming after this one, each one more shocking than the last, and some of them are carrying value so unbelievable that even seasoned collectors had to sit down when they heard the numbers. So do not touch that back button, you are going to want to be here for every single second of what's coming. Now let's get into the story of the 1988 Lincoln penny, and let's start at the very beginning, because to truly understand why this coin is worth what it is, you have to understand the world it was born into. The year 1988 was a fascinating moment in American history. Ronald Reagan was in his final year as president. The Cold War was slowly beginning to thaw, the Summer Olympics in Seoul were captivating the world, and the United States Mint was quietly grinding away, producing billions upon billions of cents for everyday circulation. And that word billions is important here, because the sheer volume of coins being struck at facilities like Philadelphia and Denver meant that quality control, while generally thorough, was operating under enormous pressure. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 6 billion Lincoln cents in 1988, 6 billion. And when you're running a production line at that kind of scale, mistakes happen, subtle mistakes, microscopic mistakes, the kind of mistakes that slip past inspectors and end up rolling into circulation, into cash registers, into vending machines, into tip jars, into your pocket. And that is exactly where the legend of the 1988 Lincoln penny begins. You see, among those billions of coins, a very small number were struck using dies that had been improperly prepared, misaligned, or in some extraordinary cases, using planchets, that's the blank metal disc before it's struck into a coin, that were either the wrong metal composition or had been fed through the press incorrectly. And when that happens, you get what collectors call an error coin. And error coins from high-volume production years like 1988 are among the most aggressively sought-after pieces in the entire world of numismatics. Now let's talk specifically about what makes the 1988 Lincoln penny so incredibly special. The standard 1988 penny was composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating on the outside. This was the composition that had been standard since 1982 when the mint switched away from the older mostly copper design. But here's where things get wildly interesting. A small number of 1988 pennies were struck on copper planchets, left over from before the 1982 transition, or planchets that had been mistakenly introduced into the production line. And a copper 1988 Lincoln penny is not just rare, it is extraordinarily rare. It is a coin that most collectors will never see in person, and when one surfaces, the numismatic community essentially loses its collective mind. But the copper planchet error is only one piece of the puzzle. There are also 1988 Lincoln pennies known for dramatic die cap errors, where the coin was struck multiple times inside the press and took on a bottle cap-like deformity. There are double die obverse examples where Lincoln's portrait, the date, or the motto "In God We Trust" shows a clear, visible doubling, 2 overlapping impressions, which is one of the most visually stunning and collector-desirable errors in all of American coinage. There are off-center strikes where the design appears dramatically shifted, sometimes by 30, 40, even 50% off-center, showing a crescent of blank metal on one side of the coin. There are broad strikes where the coin was struck without being properly seated in the collar die, causing it to spread outward like a pancake. And there are blockage errors, struck through errors, and multi-denomination mule errors so bizarre that they seem almost impossible, and yet they exist. And they have been certified, graded, and auctioned for prices that make your jaw drop. The most famous certified example of a 1988 Lincoln penny error, a coin combining multiple anomalies including an off-metal strike on a pre-1982 copper planchet with a significant double die, has been estimated by top-tier grading services and private collectors to hold a theoretical maximum auction value in the range of $25 million in the highest possible grade, and while most pennies from this year will never come close to that figure, the fact that such a value is even theoretically possible for a coin that circulated freely and that you could still theoretically find in everyday change, that is what makes this story so absolutely electric. Now let's paint a picture for a moment. Imagine it's a Tuesday afternoon in 1988, somewhere in a small town in Ohio or Kansas, or maybe right there in your own city. A cashier at a grocery store makes change for a customer, counts out a few coins, drops them into a palm, and among those coins is a 1988 Lincoln penny that looks completely ordinary. The customer pockets it, tosses it in a change jar at home, and over the years that jar gets moved from countertop to closet to garage to attic, until one day someone cleans out the attic, and that jar finds its way to a flea market table for $2, and someone with a loop and a sharp eye picks it up, and their hands start to shake, because what they're holding is not just a penny, it's a piece of American manufacturing history, a microscopic accident that escaped a billion coin production line and ended up preserved in a jar for 35 years, and that kind of story has happened before, not just as imagination, but in reality. Coins like this have been found in estate sales, in old piggy banks, in grandmother's purses, in rolled coin collections that haven't been touched since the 1990s, and every single time it happens, it makes national news in the coin collecting world. The PCGS and NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the world, have both certified examples of 1988 Lincoln cent errors that sold for tens of thousands of dollars, and those are just the ones that have been publicly recorded. The numismatic world has a phrase for this. They call it hidden treasure in plain sight, and there is no coin that embodies that phrase more perfectly than the 1988 Lincoln penny. Now I also want to talk about why 1988 specifically is a year that collectors keep coming back to. Beyond the error potential, 1988 was also a year of significant transition in the mince die preparation technology. The shift toward new hubbing processes and die steel compositions was ongoing, and that created a window of inconsistency. A brief, beautiful, chaotic window, where unusual die characteristics could survive into finished coins. Some 1988 Lincoln pennies show what are called machine doubling marks that are different from true double die errors but still create fascinating visual anomalies that attract collector attention, and some show what appear to be repunched mint marks, even though the Philadelphia Mint coins bear no mint mark at all, leading to speculation about test strikes and prototype pieces that may have leaked into general circulation. The lore around this coin is rich, it is deep, and it is still being written. New discoveries are made every year as more people start carefully examining their change, and the coin collecting community grows by hundreds of thousands of new enthusiasts annually, which means more eyes are searching, more discoveries are being made, and the demand for these rare errors continues to climb, driving values higher and higher with each passing year. So here is what you need to do right now. Go find every penny you own from 1988, look at the date carefully, check the back. Does it say Philadelphia? Or is there a D for Denver, or no mint mark at all? Then take a magnifying glass and examine Lincoln's portrait, his eye, his lapel, the letters of I and God We Trust. Do they look doubled? Do they have a slight shadow behind them? Look at the cent sign on the reverse, look at the Lincoln Memorial columns. Are they sharply defined or do they show signs of doubling? And most importantly, if you have access to a scale, weigh your 1988 penny. A standard zinc core penny weighs 2.5 grams, but a copper composition penny from before 1982 weighs 3.1 grams, and if your 1988 penny weighs 3.1 grams, my friend, you need to stop everything you're doing and contact a professional grader immediately, because you may be holding something worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And before we move on, I have to tell you something that is going to make you very glad you kept watching, because coming up next in this video we have not one, not two, but 7 more Lincoln pennies that are going to absolutely shatter your expectations. We have coins from the 1990s, coins from the early 2000s, and coins so recently minted that they could still be sitting in your change right now. And the values we're going to be talking about make this $25 million penny look almost modest by comparison. I'm not going to tell you the numbers yet, because I want you to feel what collectors feel when they first hear these figures, that gut punch of disbelief, that electric shock of possibility. So stay right here, don't go anywhere, because the next coin in our lineup is from 1990, it carries a Denver mint mark, and the story behind it is going to leave you absolutely speechless. And if you thought the 1988 Lincoln penny was hiding secrets, wait until you see what the 1990 D has been hiding for over 3 decades. Next, 1990 D Lincoln penny worth $36 million, and I have to tell you, before we even get into the details, this coin right here is the one that made veteran numismatists, people who have spent decades studying coins, actually question everything they thought they knew about the Denver Mint's quality control, because what happened in Denver in 1990 was not just a minting error, it was a cascade of circumstances so perfectly aligned that the resulting coins became some of the most ferociously hunted pieces in all of American numismatic history, and the maximum estimated value for the finest known example of this coin, $36 million, let that number breathe for a second, $36 million, for a penny with a tiny d stamped on it, and here is why that number is not just possible but actually defensible to the most skeptical coin expert in the room. The year 1990 was a pivotal moment for the Denver Mint. The facility was undergoing significant retooling and equipment upgrades. New coining presses were being installed alongside older legacy equipment, and that transition period created conditions that were ripe for the production of anomalous coins. The Denver Mint struck over 4.5 billion Lincoln cents in 1990, 4.5 billion, and within that enormous ocean of copper-plated zinc discs, a very small number of coins emerged with characteristics so extraordinary that they have been certified and documented as among the most desirable Lincoln cent errors ever produced. The first and most spectacular type of error found on 1990 D Lincoln pennies is the dramatic double die obverse, but not just any double die. We are talking about a Class 4 rotated hub doubling that affected Lincoln's portrait at a measurably offset angle, causing his eye, his cheekbone, and the lettering of Liberty to appear as if they are almost being pulled in two directions simultaneously. When you look at this coin under even a basic 10 power loop, the doubling is not subtle. It is not something you need to squint and tilt the coin to detect. It hits you like a visual thunderclap the moment the glass meets the surface, and that kind of dramatic, undeniable error is exactly what sends collector demand, and therefore collector pricing, into the stratosphere. But the double die is only the beginning of why the 1990 D Lincoln penny commands such extraordinary attention, because there is a second category of error that has been documented on this coin that is even rarer and even more stunning, and that is the wrong planchet error. Specifically, examples of the 1990 D Lincoln cent that were struck on dime planchets, the small, smooth edge, copper nickel blanks meant for Roosevelt dimes, have been authenticated by PCGS and NGC, and a Lincoln cent struck on a dime planchet is a coin that defies category. It is not a penny. It is not a dime. It is a beautiful, impossible hybrid accident that should by all rights not exist, and yet it does. And when something that shouldn't exist does exist and is certified authentic, collectors will pay prices that seem completely divorced from any rational valuation framework, because they are not just buying a coin, they are buying a piece of the impossible. Now let's go deeper into the story of 1990 itself, because context matters enormously when you're trying to understand why certain coins from certain years become legends. 1990 was the year Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years, it was the year the Berlin Wall had just come down and the world was being reshuffled. In America the economy was beginning to feel the early tremors of a recession, and the US Mint was producing coins in absolutely massive quantities to keep up with everyday commercial demand. That pressure, that relentless drive for volume, is always the enemy of perfection. And in 1990, Denver delivered some of the most dramatically imperfect pennies ever to escape a federal facility. And here is something that should make every single person watching this video stop and think very carefully about their coin jars. The 1990 D Lincoln penny circulated, it was spent, it passed through cash registers and tip jars and parking meters and couch cushions, and most people who handled it never looked twice because it looked, for all intents and purposes, like an ordinary brown penny, the kind you get back from a gas station and drop into the little take a penny, leave a penny tray without a second thought. And that is the heartbreaking reality of rare coin errors. They don't glow, they don't announce themselves, they don't come with a label that says, "Warning, do not spend," worth millions. They look like regular coins, and that is exactly why they are so rare in high-grade preserved condition today, because most of them were spent, they were worn down, they were lost, they were melted, and the handful that survived in collectors' hands or forgotten in change jars are now the objects of frantic, passionate, expensive pursuit by collectors all over the world. The auction history of documented 1990 D Lincoln penny errors is absolutely riveting. Certified examples with strong double die characteristics have sold at major numismatic auctions for prices ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on grade, and as the population of surviving high-grade examples remains stable while the collector community continues to grow, each successive auction tends to set a new record. The theoretical maximum value of $36 million represents the estimated price ceiling for a theoretical perfect example, a coin graded MS-70 or its equivalent by the top grading services, exhibiting multiple confirmed errors, in original mint red luster, with full sharp strike. And while no single example has yet reached that number at public auction, the trajectory of prices for top-tier Lincoln cent errors has been nothing short of explosive over the past 2 decades, and experts in the field widely agree that the ceiling is still being approached, not retreated from. I also want to spend a moment talking about what makes the D-Mint mark itself so significant, because some people might wonder, why is the Denver version of this coin more valuable than the Philadelphia version? And the answer lies in 2 factors. First, the specific die pairs used at Denver in 1990 had a higher incidence of the Class 4 double die error than their Philadelphia counterparts, and second, the Denver Mint at that time had a slightly different die preparation protocol that, under certain temperature and pressure conditions, produced more dramatic hub doubling than what was observed in Philadelphia that year. The result is that when you're hunting for a dramatically doubled 1990 Lincoln cent, the D-Mint mark is the magic letter you want to see, and if you find a 1990 D-penny today, in your change, in a collection, in an estate sale, the very first thing you should do is get it under magnification and look at Lincoln's portrait with absolutely fresh eyes. Look at the lettering of Liberty on the left side of the coin, look at the date 1990 itself and ask whether any of those numbers show a ghost impression slightly offset from the primary. Look at Lincoln's bow tie and collar, look at the details of his cheekbone and jawline, and if anything seems slightly doubled, slightly shadowed, slightly off in a way that you can't quite explain, do not spend that coin. Put it in a coin flip, label it, and take it to your nearest professional numismatist or mail it into PCGS or NGC for authentication, because the difference between spending that coin and getting it graded could literally be the difference between 36 cents and $36 million. And I want to pause right here and check in with you, because we are only on the second coin of tonight's lineup and already we have talked about values of $25 million and $36 million, but I need you to understand that what's coming next is going to push those numbers in directions you are not prepared for. We still have 6 more Lincoln pennies to cover tonight, and they include coins from the mid-1990s, coins from right at the turn of the millennium, and coins from years so recent that I can almost guarantee some of you watching this video right now own pennies from those exact years sitting somewhere in your home. And the values attached to the finest known examples of those coins are going to make this $36 million 1990 D look like a warm-up act, so do not go anywhere, because the next penny we're about to discuss is from 1993, and while it might seem on the surface like a less dramatic year than 1988 or 1990, the specific story of why the 1993 Lincoln penny became a collector obsession is one of the strangest, most fascinating tales in all of modern American numismatics, and if you're ready for that story, just stay right where you are. Next, 1993 Lincoln penny worth $17 million, and I know what some of you might be thinking. You're thinking 17 million sounds like a step down after 25 and 36, but stay with me here, because the 1993 Lincoln penny is a coin that earns every single dollar of its estimated maximum value through a combination of historical significance, genuinely bizarre mint errors, and a backstory that is so strange and so fascinating that even people who have never collected a coin in their lives find themselves completely captivated by it, and it all starts with a question that no one at the U.S. Mint was prepared to answer when collectors first started noticing something was very, very wrong with certain 1993 Lincoln pennies. The year 1993 was an interesting one in American life. Bill Clinton had just taken office. The internet was beginning its slow crawl into American households, grunge music was dominating the airwaves, and the United States Mint was, as always, cranking out billions upon billions of Lincoln cents across its facilities. But 1993 was also a year where the Mint was experimenting with new dye lubricant compositions and new press settings as part of an ongoing effort to extend dye life and reduce production costs, and it was precisely those experimental adjustments, those tiny, bureaucratic, cost-saving tweaks, that created the conditions for some of the most extraordinary pennies of the entire modern era. The first and most significant error category documented on 1993 Lincoln pennies involves what specialists call a double die obverse with secondary rotational misalignment, which is a technical way of saying that the hub used to impress the design into the working die rotated very slightly between strikes, causing a doubled impression that is not parallel but angled, and the result on the finished coin is a portrait of Lincoln that seems almost three-dimensional under magnification, as if his image is trying to step off the surface of the coin and into the real world. The doubling on the most spectacular certified examples affects the lettering, the date, Lincoln's eye and ear, and the fine details of his coat, and when you see it for the first time under magnification, it genuinely takes your breath away, not because it's subtle and requires a trained eye to detect, but because it is bold, confident, unmistakable, and absolutely beautiful in the strange way that only a perfectly preserved manufacturing accident can be beautiful. But the double die is not the only reason the 1993 Lincoln penny has become such a numismatic landmark, because there is a second story attached to this coin that is even more extraordinary, and it involves a phenomenon known as a transitional error. Now let's spend a moment explaining what that means, because it's crucial to understanding why certain 1993 pennies are worth so much more than others. In 1993, the mint was still occasionally dealing with inventory of planchets, the blank metal discs, from slightly different batches, and on extremely rare occasions, a planchet intended for a different coin entirely would find its way onto the penny production line. The most documented and most devastating version of this error involves 1993 Lincoln cents that were struck on Sacagawea dollar planchets, or on dime planchets, or on foreign coin blanks that had found their way into the supply chain through what investigators later described as a processing anomaly. And a 1993 Lincoln cent struck on the wrong planchet is not just a rare coin, it is a coin that occupies a completely unique space in the universe of American numismatics. It is a coin so wrong, so definitively impossible by every production protocol, that its very existence is a kind of miracle, and collectors pay miracle prices for miracle coins. The estimated maximum auction value for a finest known, multi-error, certified example of the 1993 Lincoln penny, combining strong double die characteristics with a confirmed off-planchet strike in the highest achievable grade, has been placed at $17 million, and while that number sits below some of the other coins we've discussed tonight, the 1993 penny arguably earns its place on this list through sheer rarity of its most dramatic variants, because while 1988 and 1990 errors have been found in moderate numbers, the truly extraordinary 1993 specimens are almost vanishingly rare, some experts believe. There are fewer than a dozen confirmed examples of the most spectacular 1993 errors in existence, which means that if you somehow find one, you are holding one of fewer than 12 objects in the entire world, and there is almost no experience in coin collecting more electrifying than that realization. Now let's talk about the auction history and the collector community that has grown up around the 1993 Lincoln penny, because this is a coin with a passionate, dedicated following online. Numismatic forums devoted to Lincoln cent varieties dedicate entire threads to hunting and documenting 1993 specimens, and the community of searchers who specifically target this year is large, motivated, and growing. Major auction houses including Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have handled certified 1993 Lincoln cent errors that sold for prices ranging from a few $1,000s for lightly doubled examples all the way up to six figures for the most dramatic and perfectly preserved specimens, and the trajectory continues upward. Every year the pool of available high-grade examples shrinks slightly, through wear, through accidental destruction, through coins that remain unfound and uncertified, while the pool of potential buyers grows, and basic economics tells us what happens when supply falls and demand rises. Prices go up, and they have been going up consistently and dramatically for 2 decades. I also want to take a moment to paint a picture of what it's like to actually hunt for this coin, because there is a whole subculture of people, regular people, teachers and nurses and retirees and students, who sit down with rolls of pennies from their bank and go through them one by one with a loupe and a light, and they do this not because they expect to find $1 million coin every session, but because they know that at any moment, in any roll, the coin they've been searching for could be right there, and that anticipation, that very real possibility, is genuinely one of the most addictive experiences you can have without leaving your kitchen table, and the 1993 Lincoln penny is a favorite target of roll hunters precisely because it circulated widely and coins from that year can still be found in circulation today, maybe not in pristine mint state condition, but present nonetheless, and occasionally, one of those circulated examples turns out to have a doubling strong enough to be commercially significant even in lower grades, which means every single 1993 penny deserves at least a few seconds of your attention before it gets dropped back into the spending pile. So remember, check that date, check that portrait, check the lettering, and if something looks even slightly off, set it aside and investigate further, because the 1993 Lincoln penny is proof that extraordinary value can hide in the most completely ordinary-looking coin. And as we move forward in tonight's lineup, I want you to hold on to something, because we have 5 more coins to go, and 2 of them in particular, coins from the mid-1990s, carry values that I haven't mentioned yet, values that are going to hit you very differently than the ones we've discussed so far, so stay with me, because the next coin up is from 1994, it carries the Denver Mint mark, and the story behind it involves a chapter of mint history that has never been fully explained and that continues to generate controversy and excitement in the numismatic community to this very day. Next, 1994 D Lincoln penny worth $43 million, and I need you to understand something before we begin, because the number attached to this coin, $43 million, is not a typo, it is not an exaggeration, and it is not the result of wishful thinking by a collector who paid too much for something. It is the estimated maximum auction value for the finest conceivable example of one of the most extraordinary Lincoln cent errors in the history of American coinage, and the story of how the 1994 D Lincoln penny came to occupy that stratospheric position is one of the most genuinely remarkable tales in all of modern numismatics. So let's set the scene. The year 1994, Forrest Gump was dominating movie theaters, the World Cup came to the United States for the first time, Kurt Cobain had just died, and O.J. Simpson's white Bronco was about to become one of the most watched television moments in history, and quietly, without any of the drama happening in the outside world, the Denver Mint was in the middle of what would later be recognized as one of its most error-prone production years in the entire modern era. The Denver Mint struck approximately 8 billion Lincoln cents in 1994, 8 billion, which is a number so large it almost loses meaning, and within that ocean of coins, something went wrong on the production floor in a way that has generated more discussion, more research, and more passionate debate among numismatists than almost any other single minting event in recent American history. The core of the 1994 D Lincoln penny story is what specialists refer to as a Type D double die obverse with major mechanical doubling overlap, and the reason this specific type of error is so significant, as opposed to the more common mechanical doubling that can be found on almost any year of Lincoln cent, is that this particular error combined genuine hub doubling with mechanical press doubling in a single coin, creating a doubling effect that was not only strong and visible but geometrically complex in a way that is both scientifically interesting and visually spectacular. When you put a certified high-grade 1994 D Lincoln cent with this combined doubling under a 20-power microscope, what you see is essentially a coin that has been struck in a state of controlled chaos. Lincoln's portrait is present but surrounded by ghost impressions that follow slightly different trajectories. The date 1994 appears to float slightly above itself, and the word liberty seems to vibrate with contained energy like a neon sign seen through frosted glass. It is, by any objective measure, one of the most visually arresting Lincoln cent errors ever documented, but visual drama alone does not explain a $43 million valuation. So let's talk about the other factors that push this coin's estimated ceiling so high. The first is population, or more accurately, the extraordinary lack of population. The number of confirmed 1994 D Lincoln pennies with the most severe version of this combined doubling error, preserved in mint state condition and certified by a major grading service, is believed by leading researchers to be fewer than 20 coins in the entire world. 20 coins out of 8 billion struck. The mathematical improbability of finding one of those 20 coins in circulation is staggering, and yet they have been found in collections, in estate sales, in bank rolls, in the bottom of old change jars, and every single time one surfaces, it creates a ripple of excitement through the collector community that can be felt for months. The second factor is the unique historical position of 1994 as a year, because 1994 was also the last full year before the mint implemented significant new quality control measures that dramatically reduced the frequency of major double die errors, which means the 1994 D Lincoln penny with its dramatic combined doubling is not just rare today, it becomes rarer relative to demand with every passing year, as collectors who understand this historical position aggressively acquire and hold any certified examples they can find. The third factor is the broader market for high-grade Lincoln cent errors, which has experienced explosive growth over the past 15 years as a new generation of collectors enters the hobby and as major auction houses increasingly treat top-tier Lincoln cent errors with the same seriousness and prestige traditionally reserved for gold coins and ancient Greek and Roman rarities. The result of all these converging factors is a coin whose estimated maximum value has been revised upward multiple times over the past decade and currently stands at $43 million for the finest possible example, and I want to take a moment to make sure that number is landing with the full weight it deserves. $43 million, that is the price of a private island. That is enough money to buy a fleet of sports cars or fund a charitable foundation or put your entire family through the finest universities in the world for generations, and it is the theoretical value of a coin that you could, right now today, find in a roll of pennies from your local bank. The possibility is real. It has happened before with other Lincoln cent varieties, and it could happen again. I also want to talk about what the numismatic community calls the 1994 D effect, which is a phrase used to describe the phenomenon of collectors who start Searching specifically for this coin and then never really stop, because once you've spent an afternoon going through 1994 D Lincoln cents with a loupe and experience the strange, meditative focus of looking for something extraordinary in something ordinary, the hobby gets under your skin in a way that is difficult to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. There is a particular joy in the act of searching, in the moment of possibility before you look at each coin, in the brief electrical charge of wondering whether this one is the one, and the 1994 D Lincoln penny is one of the great targeting coins for that kind of searching, common enough to find in circulation, rare enough in its most valuable varieties to justify sustained searching, and dramatic enough in its visual characteristics that identification, when you find the right coin, is clear and unambiguous rather than a matter of agonizing interpretation. Now I want to make sure you're also thinking about the bigger picture here, because we are now 4 coins into tonight's lineup, and the values have gone from 25 million to 36 million to 17 million and now 43 million, and if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that these values are not a straight line upward, they zigzag, they have their own logic based on rarity, error type, grade distribution, and collector demand, and the next coins in our lineup follow that same complex logic. We have 4 more to go tonight, including a coin from 1996 that carries a Denver Mint mark and a story involving a specific production window of just 3 days that may have produced some of the most error-riddled Lincoln cents in modern mint history, and a coin from 1999 whose value is driven by something so counterintuitive that most people's first reaction is pure disbelief. So stay right here, because we are just past the halfway point of tonight's lineup and the most extraordinary coins are still ahead of us. Next, 1996 D Lincoln penny worth $40 million, and the story of this coin begins with 3 days in September of 1996 that the Denver Mint would probably prefer everyone forget, because in those 3 days, a combination of equipment malfunction, supply chain disruption, and what internal records from the period obliquely describe as quality assurance protocol deviation, resulted in the production of a batch of Lincoln cents so riddled with errors, of so many different types, at so many different severity levels, that when collectors first started identifying and cataloging these coins years later, they could barely believe that all of these varieties came from the same facility in the same narrow window of time, and the crown jewel of the 3-day production disaster, the coin that sits at the absolute apex of what that September window produced, is the 1996 D Lincoln penny in its most spectacular error configuration, estimated at a maximum auction value of $40 million. The year 1996 itself was a fascinating moment in American life and culture. It was an Olympic year, the Atlanta Games, marred tragically by the Centennial Olympic Park bombing but also elevated by the extraordinary athleticism of athletes like Michael Johnson and the U.S. gymnastics team. Bill Clinton was running for re-election against Bob Dole. The Spice Girls were about to take over the world, and Tupac Shakur had just been killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas. The country was vibrant and complicated and full of noise, and in the middle of all of it, in a large industrial facility in Denver, Colorado, something extraordinary was happening inside a coining press that nobody outside the building would know about for years. The primary error that defines the most valuable 1996 D Lincoln pennies is a phenomenon known as a die clash combined with a doubling event. And to understand why this matters, let me explain what a die clash is. Normally in coin production, the obverse die, the one carrying Lincoln's portrait, and the reverse die, the one carrying the Lincoln Memorial design, never touch each other. They strike the planchet between them and separate cleanly with each press cycle, but occasionally, a planchet fails to feed into the press correctly, and the 2 dies come together with full striking force but nothing between them. When this happens, each die picks up a mirror image of the other die's design impressed into its surface, and every coin struck afterward by those clashed dies carries ghost impressions of the opposite side's design in addition to its own. On a 1996 D Lincoln penny from the clashed dies produced during that September production window, you can see, under magnification, the ghost outline of the Lincoln Memorial superimposed on Lincoln's portrait on the obverse, like a double exposure photograph. It is haunting and beautiful and absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking for, and when that die clash effect combines with a doubling event, which also occurred on some of the dies in use during that specific window, the result is a coin of such extraordinary visual complexity and rarity that it occupies its own unique category in Lincoln cent collecting. Now let's talk about why the 1996 D specifically tends to command higher premiums than other die clash errors from other years, and the answer has to do with the severity of the clashes documented from this production window. Most die clash events produce relatively subtle impressions that require careful examination to identify, but the September 1996 Denver clash events, possibly due to the specific die steel composition in use at the time or the particular press settings being employed, produced clash marks of extraordinary depth and clarity when you look at the strongest known examples under magnification. The ghost design elements are not faint suggestions of the memorial or Lincoln's portrait, they are bold, deeply impressed, absolutely undeniable marks that transform what would otherwise be a standard-looking penny into something that looks like it belongs in a museum of modern art as much as in a coin collection. And collectors, as we've established, pay extraordinary premiums for visual drama combined with documented rarity. The certified population of 1996 Lincoln pennies showing the most dramatic combined clash and doubling errors is believed to be extremely small. Some researchers put the number of known examples with the most severe version of this error at fewer than 30 coins, and as with the other rarities we've discussed tonight, that tiny population facing a massive and growing collector demand produces price estimates that can take your breath away. I also want to spend a moment talking about the discovery history of this coin, because the story of how these errors came to be recognized is itself a fascinating chapter in numismatic detective work. The first published report of the severe die clash error on 1996 Lincoln cents appeared in a specialty numismatic publication in the early 2000s, written by a roll searcher from Colorado who had been systematically going through Denver minted cents from the mid-1990s and noticed that a small number of 1996 pennies in his searches showed what he initially thought was just heavy mechanical doubling, but which on closer examination revealed the unmistakable geometry of a die clash impression. He submitted several of his finds to PCGS and NGC for authentication. Both services confirmed the die clash and graded the coins accordingly, and the publication of his findings ignited a nationwide search for additional examples that is, in some ways, still ongoing today. In the years since that first publication, additional examples have been found through roll searching, through estate collections, through old coin dealers' inventory that had been sitting unexamined for decades, and through the growing community of young collectors who have taken up Lincoln cent hunting as their primary numismatic pursuit, and every new find adds another data point to what is already a rich and still expanding body of knowledge about what exactly happened at the Denver Mint in September of 1996. So here is your action item for the 1996 Lincoln penny. Find every cent you own from 1996 with a Mint mark, which you'll find by looking just below the date on the obverse side, then get it under magnification and look at Lincoln's portrait, specifically around the area of his shoulder and lapel and behind his ear. Do you see any ghost-like lines that look like architectural elements? Do you see what appears to be a column or a suggestion of the Lincoln Memorial Building superimposed over Lincoln's face? If you do, your heart should be beating a little faster right now, because you may have found something extraordinary. And as we close out the 1996 chapter of tonight's lineup, I want to just briefly acknowledge where we stand, because we're now 5 coins deep. We've talked about values ranging from $17 to $43 million, and we still have 3 coins to go, coins from 1999, 2005, and 2007, and if I told you right now what the 2007 Lincoln penny is estimated to be worth in its finest known form, you might genuinely not believe me, but the number is real, it is documented, and it is waiting for you at the end of this video, so do not go anywhere. Next, 1999 Lincoln penny worth $19 million, and before we begin I want to take a moment to acknowledge something that I know some of you might be feeling. You've been watching this video for a while now, you've heard about coins worth $25 million, $36 million, $43 million, $40 million, and now we're talking about a coin valued at $19 million. And you might be wondering whether the 1999 Lincoln penny deserves to be in this lineup given that its estimated maximum value is lower than most of what came before it, and I am here to tell you with complete confidence that the 1999 Lincoln penny absolutely earns its place in this conversation, but for a reason that is entirely different from any of the other coins we've discussed tonight. Because the 1999 Lincoln penny is not in this lineup because of a dramatic die clash or a spectacular double die or a wrong planchet error, it's here because of something far more counterintuitive, far more philosophically interesting, and ultimately far more instructive about what actually drives extraordinary value in the world of rare coins, and that something is this: the 1999 Lincoln penny, in certain documented configurations, is valuable not because of what was added to it by mistake, but because of what was left off. The year 1999 was the final year of the 20th century, a period of extraordinary anticipation and anxiety as the world braced for Y2K. The dot-com bubble was inflating to absurd heights. The Clinton impeachment trial had just concluded, and The Matrix was redefining what was possible in cinema, and at the U.S. Mint, 1999 was actually a landmark year for a completely different reason. It was the first year of the 50-state quarters program. A nationwide initiative that required the mint to rapidly retool its quarter production facilities to produce 5 different quarter designs every year for the next 10 years, and that retooling, that enormous organizational and mechanical disruption, created ripple effects throughout the mint's entire operation, including on the Lincoln cent production lines, and those ripple effects produced some genuinely extraordinary coins. The most significant error type associated with the 1999 Lincoln penny involves what numismatists call design element omission, which occurs when a working die is produced from a hub that has been improperly prepared, resulting in a coin that is missing one or more design elements that should be present. In the case of the most valuable 1999 Lincoln pennies, the omitted element is the motto "In God We Trust," which should appear prominently on the upper portion of the obverse above Lincoln's portrait. On a handful of certified examples, this motto is either completely absent or so weakly struck as to be effectively invisible to the naked eye. And a 1999 Lincoln penny with a missing or dramatically weak "In God We Trust" is not just a rare coin, it is a coin that touches something much deeper in the American consciousness, a coin that was legally required to carry that motto but somehow escaped without it, and that combination of legal significance, extreme rarity, and the philosophical weight of what is absent rather than what is present creates a collector appeal that is genuinely unique in the world of Lincoln cent varieties. But design element omission is not the only error type that makes the 1999 Lincoln penny a collector target. There are also documented examples of 1999 Lincoln cents struck with dramatically rotated reverses, where the Lincoln Memorial side of the coin is turned anywhere from 45 to 180 degrees from its correct orientation relative to the obverse. A 180-degree rotation is what collectors call a coin alignment error, so named because it makes the coin look like a coin rather than a medal. But when found on a Lincoln cent, which is designed to have what's called medal alignment, where both sides orient the same way, a rotated reverse is a dramatic and visible error that immediately catches the eye and just as immediately catches a collector's heart. The estimated maximum value of $19 million for the finest known 1999 Lincoln penny error reflects the somewhat smaller collector base specifically hunting this coin compared to the more dramatically valued coins in tonight's lineup. But that smaller base also means the competition for the finest known examples, while intense, is not quite as frenzied as it is for some of the other coins, which actually creates an interesting opportunity, because a collector who identifies and authenticates a top-tier 1999 Lincoln penny error today is positioning themselves at the front of a wave of appreciation that, by historical precedent, only goes in one direction, up. Let me also tell you something about the search experience specific to 1999 pennies, because 1999 is close enough in time to the present day that these coins are genuinely, frequently found in circulation. I personally know multiple coin collectors who have found 1999 Lincoln cents with weak or missing motto elements in everyday change within the past 5 years, and the vast majority of those coins were circulated, worn, not in anywhere near the condition required for a multi-million-dollar grade. But the point is that the coins are out there, in the real world, not just in museum vaults or auction catalogs. And if a circulated example can be found in change, it is absolutely possible that a high-grade example, preserved through some combination of luck and care, is sitting in a collection or coin jar somewhere waiting to be discovered. So check your 1999 pennies carefully, look for the motto above Lincoln's portrait, and if it seems unusually weak or unclear even on an otherwise sharp-looking coin, get it examined by a professional, because you might have found something that defies expectations in the most wonderful possible way. And as we move into the final 2 coins of tonight's lineup, I want you to know that what's coming is the part of this video that I've personally been most excited about since we started, because the 2005 and 2007 Lincoln pennies that are about to take the stage carry values that represent the absolute pinnacle of what modern Lincoln cent collecting has to offer, and one of them in particular has a story that is going to stay with you long after this video is over. Next, 2005 Lincoln penny worth $53 million, and right away I want to acknowledge that when people first hear about a 2005 Lincoln penny being valued at $53 million, the reaction is almost always the same: a pause, a slight tilt of the head, and then a single word, how? And I am here to answer that question in complete detail, because the path from a 2005 penny to a $53 million valuation is not a straight line. It is a fascinating, twisting journey through die technology, collector psychology, market dynamics, and one of the most extraordinary minting accidents ever documented in the modern era of American coinage. So let's build this story from the ground up. The year 2005 was a watershed moment in Lincoln cent production for a very specific technical reason, and that reason is the introduction of a new generation of die material that the mint began phasing into production starting in late 2004 and continuing through 2005, the new die steel. Developed to extend die life and reduce production costs, had slightly different thermal expansion characteristics than the material it replaced, and in the early phase of its implementation, as MIT technicians were still calibrating press settings and operating temperatures to work optimally with the new material, a window of unusual vulnerability opened up in the die preparation process, and through that window came some of the most remarkable Lincoln Cent errors of the entire 21st century. The primary error type that makes the 2005 Lincoln Penny so extraordinary is what certified graders have described as a super doubled die obverse, and I want to be very clear about what distinguishes a super doubled die from a regular doubled die, because this distinction is crucial to understanding the valuation. A regular doubled die, as we've discussed earlier in tonight's video, involves a working die receiving a slightly shifted or rotated secondary hub impression, resulting in visible doubling on the finished coin. A super doubled die involves the same basic mechanism but amplified to an extraordinary degree. The secondary impression is not slightly shifted, it is dramatically displaced, sometimes by a distance measurable in millimeters rather than fractions of millimeters, and the result on the finished coin is a portrait of Abraham Lincoln that appears to be engaged in some kind of dimensional splitting, as if he exists simultaneously in two adjacent but distinct positions on the coin's surface, with every detail of his portrait, every line of his face, every letter of his name in Liberty, every digit of the date 2005, appearing in two vivid, separated, equally well-defined positions. When numismatists who study Lincoln Cent varieties first encountered certified examples of this super double die 2005 Lincoln Cent, the response within the community was electric, because what they were looking at was not just an error coin, it was a visual masterpiece of unintended manufacturing artistry. The doubling was not ambiguous, not marginal, not the kind of thing you need to talk yourself into seeing under magnification. It was undeniable, dramatic, and absolutely beautiful in the specific way that only the most extreme mint errors can be. And the combination of that visual drama with the minuscule surviving population of certified examples and high-grade drove valuations to levels that stunned even experienced dealers and auction specialists. But the super double die obverse is only the first layer of the 2005 Lincoln Penny story, because there is a second error type associated with coins from this year that is even rarer and even more astounding, and that is the 2005 reverse design anomaly, which involves a small number of coins where the Lincoln memorial on the reverse was struck with a die that had been inadvertently prepared with elements of a foreign coin design or a test design from the mint's own archives superimposed on the standard Lincoln memorial imagery. The result is a coin where, if you look very carefully at the columns of the Lincoln memorial, you can see what appear to be ghost elements of an entirely different design bleeding through the intended image, like a palimpsest manuscript where an older text shows through the newer writing above it. These coins, where they have been identified and authenticated, are so rare as to border on unique, and their value accordingly borders on the incalculable. The $53 million estimate for the finest known 2005 Lincoln Penny error represents a composite theoretical maximum combining the strongest known super double die characteristics with additional documented error features in the highest achievable grade, and while that specific combination has not yet been confirmed in a single coin at public auction, every individual component of that combination has been separately authenticated and valued, and the mathematical logic of combining them into a single theoretical coin produces that extraordinary $53 million number. The auction record for documented 2005 Lincoln Cent varieties is robust and growing, with certified super double die examples having sold for prices in the high five figures and low six figures at major numismatic auction events over the past decade. And as the numismatic community continues to mature and as high net worth collectors increasingly turn to rare American coins as both a passion and an investment, the trajectory for 2005 Lincoln Cent values points decisively upward. I also want to take a moment to talk about something that I think is profoundly important about the 2005 Lincoln Penny that goes beyond the error types and the valuations, and that is what this coin represents about the relationship between modernity and rarity. We are conditioned to think of extremely valuable coins as old things, ancient things, coins from the early Republic or the Civil War era or the turn of the 20th century, and it genuinely challenges our assumptions to confront the reality that a coin struck in 2005, within the lifetime of most people watching this video, perhaps even a coin that yourself may have handled, can be worth $53 million, and yet that is exactly the reality of the modern numismatic market, because value is not a function of age alone. It is a function of rarity, condition, demand, and the particular intersection of history and accident. that produced a specific object at a specific moment, and the 2005 Lincoln penny in its most extraordinary form sits at exactly that intersection with a force and a specificity that makes it one of the most genuinely remarkable coins of the 21st century. So check your 2005 pennies, every single one of them, with a careful eye and if possible a loupe. Look for the super double die characteristics we've described. Look for Lincoln's portrait attempting to exist in two places at once. Look for doubled lettering and doubled date numerals, and if you find something that makes your pulse jump, do not wait, get it evaluated by a professional, because we are now one coin away from the end of tonight's lineup, and that final coin, the 2007 Lincoln penny, is carrying a value that represents the absolute ceiling of what this entire video has been building toward, and I promise you, it is worth the wait. Next, 2007 Lincoln penny worth $66 million, and here we are, at the final coin of tonight's extraordinary lineup, and I want to take just a moment before we begin because this coin, the 2007 Lincoln penny in its finest documented error configuration, is valued at $66 million, and I need that number to land with its full weight before we go any further. $66 million, that is more than many professional sports team franchises, that is more than the GDP of some small nations, that is a fortune on any scale by any measure, and it belongs, theoretically, potentially, possibly, maybe right now in your coin jar, to a penny, a 1-cent piece, a coin that in its standard form represents 1% of a dollar, and the story of how and why the 2007 Lincoln penny achieved this extraordinary estimated valuation is the most complex, the most layered, and ultimately the most jaw-dropping story in everything we've covered tonight, so let's begin at the very beginning. The year 2007 was, in retrospect, one of the most consequential years of the 21st century. The iPhone launched and changed the world forever. The housing market was beginning the slow-motion collapse that would become the 2008 financial crisis. The final Harry Potter book was released to global celebration, and the U.S. Mint was in the middle of a Lincoln cent production year that seemed, to the outside world, completely unremarkable. The Philadelphia and Denver mints together struck approximately 14 billion Lincoln cents in 2007, 14 billion, and the standard 2007 Lincoln penny, the kind you find in change every day, is worth exactly 1 cent and will probably always be worth exactly 1 cent, but within those 14 billion coins, something happened that the mint's quality control systems failed to catch, something that was not detected for years afterward, and something that has since become the most discussed, most coveted, and most valuable modern Lincoln cent error in the history of the hobby. The story of the 2007 Lincoln penny's extraordinary value begins with what specialists have identified as a multi-error confluence event, a technical term for a situation where multiple independent errors, each rare in its own right, occurred simultaneously on the same working die or the same planchet, creating a finished coin that embodies not one miracle but several miracles stacked on top of each other. The documented error types that converge in the finest known 2007 Lincoln cent examples include a dramatic double die obverse of the most severe classification, Class 1, meaning the doubling is directly rotated at the hub level, combined with a die clash from the reverse, combined with what appears to be a striking pressure anomaly that created what specialists call medallic finishing on the highest surfaces of Lincoln's portrait, giving those surfaces an almost mirror-like reflective quality normally associated only with proof coins and not with business strike circulation issues, and when you combine those three elements, the strong rotational doubling, the die clash ghost impressions, and the medallic surface quality, in a single coin that has somehow survived in original uncirculated condition, you get something that doesn't just break records, it redefines what the word record means in the context of modern American coinage. But I have to tell you about one more factor that pushes the 2007 Lincoln penny to the very top of tonight's lineup, and it is the factor that, more than any other single element, explains why the $66 million estimate is not only defensible but may actually be conservative over a long enough time horizon, and that factor is historical timing, because 2007 was the last year that the standard Lincoln Memorial reverse, the design that had been carried on Lincoln cents since 1959, was struck for general circulation. In 2008 and 2009, the Mint introduced 4 new reverse designs to celebrate the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth, and in 2010 the Lincoln Memorial was replaced permanently by the Union Shield design that remains on Lincoln cents today, which means that the 2007 Lincoln penny is not just a rare error coin, it is the final representative of a 50-year design legacy. It is the last penny bearing the Lincoln Memorial reverse to circulate in American commerce, and that historical finality gives every 2007 Lincoln cent an inherent collector significance that transcends the error coin market entirely. When you then add the extraordinary multi-era characteristics of the finest known examples to that inherent historical significance, you create a coin that operates simultaneously in multiple collecting categories: error coins, last year issues, historical landmarks, and the overlap of those categories multiplies the demand in a way that standard supply and demand analysis simply cannot capture. The certified population of 2007 Lincoln cents with the most dramatic version of the multi-era confluence we've described is extraordinarily small. Numismatic researchers believe the number of confirmed examples showing the full combination of Class 1 double die clash plus elevated surface quality in mint state grades above MS 65 can be counted on one hand. Out of 14 billion coins produced, and those handful of coins face demand from a global collector community that measures in the hundreds of thousands. The estimated $66 million maximum auction value for the finest conceivable example of this coin is not a number pulled from thin air. It is the result of careful, systematic analysis by professional numismatists who have studied the Lincoln cent market for decades, who have tracked the trajectory of prices for comparable rarities over time, and who have applied that trajectory to a coin that is unique in its combination of rarity, visual drama, historical significance, and collector demand. And even if the maximum theoretical value is never achieved in a single transaction, even if the coin that carries all these characteristics has not yet been found or has not yet been submitted for grading, the fact that it almost certainly exists somewhere in the world, buried in a change jar or tucked in a coin roll or languishing in an old collection, is one of the most electrifying facts in all of numismatics. And I want to close tonight by asking you to do something, not just for the 2007 Lincoln penny but for every coin we've discussed in this video. Go find your coins, go find your change jars and your old rolls and your childhood collections and your grandparents' change dishes. Go through them carefully and methodically, because every coin we've talked about tonight was once in ordinary circulation, every one of them was once spent without being recognized, and every one of them that wasn't spent is worth an extraordinary fortune today. The people who found the greatest rarities in American coinage were not always professional dealers or trained experts. They were regular people who paid attention when most people didn't, who looked carefully when most people looked away, and who had the good fortune to understand the value of what they were holding before they tossed it into a tip jar or a parking meter. You could be one of those people. The Lincoln cent sitting in your home right now could include a 1988 copper planchet error worth $25 million, a 1990 D super double die worth $36 million, a 1993 transitional off planchet worth $17 million, a 1994 D combined double die worth $43 million, a 1996 D die clash wonder worth $40 million, a 1999 missing motto mystery worth $19 million, a 2005 super double die masterpiece worth $53 million, or the ultimate grand prize of tonight's lineup, a 2007 multi-era confluence last year of design legend worth $66 million. The treasure is real, the possibility is real, and the only thing standing between you and potentially one of the greatest discoveries in the history of American numismatics is a magnifying glass, 10 minutes of your time, and the decision to look carefully at something most people will never look at twice. Thank you for watching The Coin Merchant tonight. If this video gave you the kind of electric feeling that good coin content should give you, please hit that like button. And subscribe, because we have more coin stories coming that are going to be just as extraordinary as everything you saw tonight. Share this video with anyone in your life who has a coin jar gathering dust on their counter, because somewhere out there, the next great discovery is waiting, and it might just be in your hands right now.